Welcome to Go For Side Effects. I'm your host, Kevin Simon, and there's my smart-ass co-host, John. How y'all doing this evening, John?
Doing good. Hey,
And we got the round table. We are missing Sarah tonight. She's out sick, so everybody say a prayer for her. And we got Wade. Wade, how you doing?
Better than I deserve.
That's true. Well, tonight we got a special guest. It's Jim Brown. Jim, how are you doing?
I am hanging in there, sir. It's good to be on here.
That's
And
the
I want to say up front, thank you very much for having this and making sure that we can get some information out to some Gulf War veterans, get some people informed and helped.
Oh man, you're welcome, man. You're right. And give a little bit of background. I like everybody to know who you are. I know a lot of people already know who you are, but let's get the other side of the civilians that listen to the podcast to know who you are.
My name is Jim Brown. I'm a U.S. Army combat veteran. I'm deployed with the 10th Mountain Division, as you can see behind me. My guys. We were given the anthrax and botulism vaccines before we deployed. We got told about 5 days in that we were going to be going in the first part of August 1990. So they started making prep work, get everything together as quickly as we possibly could, on the off chance that they figured out which unit we were going to be attached to, which really didn't make us feel very welcome or wanted, but who knew? For about 2 days, my entire unit was down, had flu-like symptoms, headaches, backaches, massive fatigue, confusion, all sorts of problems, and then essentially bounced back, got to the point where we could start working again, and then worked for probably about the next 2 weeks straight, many hours as we could during the day. When we deployed, that was 25th of September, 1990, hit the sands running, 140-degree heat. So for us being upstate New York mountain troops, we're winterized troops. That was a bit of a shock to the system. Going from working in 20 below to 140 above, that was nothing but fun. So symptomology-wise, we more or less stayed sick and got sicker during the time frame that we were there. The heat, bad water, bad food, exposure to pesticides, pretty much everything you could ask for to knock out your immune system. And as that went on, we got to the point where we got moved around. We went to Puerto Damam, Dahran, moved up the eastern coast, saw probably every unit in the entire field at one point or another. We were a support unit. We did military intelligence, maintenance. We had point of supply. We offered pretty much a one-stop shop for anybody that wanted to be able to get something fixed, taken care of, or transported.
I know you've done a lot of work and a lot of research, and that part I would like to get into with you about the anthrax, because a lot of people don't understand what the anthrax did to us and why it did it and what all it caused. Can you go through all that with us?
Sure, yeah. Just to give you a little history on the people who made the vaccine, that is brutally important for people to understand. The lab that manufactured it is in Lansing, Michigan. It's called the Michigan Department of Public Health. It's actually a government-owned and operated facility. That's the public health part. The anthrax vaccine itself was put together by two guys back in 1950. They formulated it, manufactured it, invented it, if you want to call it that. They manufactured it at this lab until 1970, and that was the first time that they ended up even talking to the FDA. They got licensed in 1970 to produce it under license number 099. And 20 years had gone by where the FDA just left them to their own machinations. Then 1990 comes around, another 20 years, so 40 years since it started, and hundreds of thousands of doses are suddenly put into people's arms, whereas before this had only been used for people who were wool sorters or people who dealt with cattle. Not exactly a big spread as far as people getting this kind of vaccine. When the MDPH, the Michigan Department of Public Health, was told you're going to have to start cranking up production, they went nuts. This is something that they'd never had to deal with before. They had no idea what was going on. So they said, okay, we sent out anthrax vaccine to all these different farms and labs that are experimenting with stuff where they just work with anthrax, including US AMRID. They supplied the anthrax vaccine for all the researchers at the United States Army's Bug Palace. That's what most people nickname it. The recall of those vaccines was the linchpin, the key to everybody getting totally screwed over by this vaccine, because during that time frame from 1950 to 1990, that 40 years, they had never had anybody experience any kind of symptoms like Gulf War syndrome from this vaccine. Never happened, just never happened. So something happened in 1990 that either changed the vaccine, the way it was administered, something made a difference. And I can tell you exactly what it was. In 1987, 3 years before the war started, there were researchers at US AMRID, a Dr. Bruce Ivins, Dr. Susan Welkos, and a Dr. Greg Knudsen. Those three researchers had figured out that the anthrax vaccine was not really as good as the military thought it was. When they started going the other route, they said, can actually handle. You don't just hand out bulletproof vests and say, well, we hope that it will keep you safe. Let's actually shoot some bullets at it and see what it'll withstand. If you say it's a good up to a 45 caliber, but it'll only handle a 22, you might want to change a few things. So they looked into it and did research, found out the vaccine will not protect against inhaled anthrax, which is going to be the manufactured way of attacking your enemy with anthrax. You're not going to walk up and sprinkle it on their food or something. You're going to put it in a dust cloud. They breathe it in, and within 24 hours, die from it. So, excuse me. So they did research on the inhaled version of anthrax and found out the vaccine just absolutely was not up to par. But they could make it, but the big problem was 1/3 of the individuals who got the vaccine for the more virulent type were going to die from the vaccine. It was that toxic. So they're throwing their hands up in the air and trying to figure out, well, holy crap, what do? We need to protect the troops. They decided we'll do some genetic manipulation. We'll take the genes out of the anthrax itself. And there's a thing called PA, or protective antigen, is taken out of that and then inserted into another less virulent bug than anthrax, Bacillus subtilis, also known as Bacillus kolbegi. It causes hemorrhagic conjunctivitis, which is known as bleeding of the eyes. They consider that less harmful than anthrax, so let's go with that. They plugged the genes into this new bug. It produced protective antigen, and it protected almost 95% of the individuals that got it. Now, they used a novel adjuvant known as squalene, also known as MF59, in that, so that they could get a really good immune response. And since they were in a lab, they weren't really worried about what was going on with the animals, because whatever animal they tested it on, they were probably going to kill anyway. So they weren't looking at longevity. They were looking at results at that moment. They tweaked the vaccine at a later time once it got to production. They never got there. The war started in 1990. Sure, go ahead.
Let me interrupt you a little, Jim. So you started. You said you knew the reason, and you've explained it. 87, and so in 90, when things were kicking off, you're saying that it was 95% effective, which gives a 5% not so good thing.
That's the experimental one, not the usual one. They were trying to find one to replace the old one. The old one,
okay,
yeah, the old one was not up to snuff. The new one, the genetically altered one, was one that would give you 95% capability. So once they figured that out and said, all right, we're going to start manufacturing this in pilot lots and spread it around to other researchers so we could get some peer review. When the war kicked off, DOD said we need all, big air quotes here, and this is the important part, all anthrax vaccines sent back to the guys in Michigan. The experimental stuff went with it as well.
Oh,
there's
the big caveat. Right. The experimental stuff went back with it. Yes. There's the real. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, that's
so this went back to the plant, and their usual method of being able to do this, they gave this, and again, big air quotes, a shelf life. So they'd produce a vial of the vaccine. They sent it to somebody that ran a ranch or was a veterinary doctor or somebody that would actually run into anthrax every now and then. I mean, like once a year or something, a cow would get it or something.
Or deer.
So they would send these bottles out to these people. Sorry, go ahead.
Deer run into anthrax all the time here in Texas. That's the crazy part, and they'll find them dead everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, happens in nature. It's a natural occurring bug, regardless of us running into it or not. You're right. Animals run into it. Cows out in the pasture, sheep, all that stuff. So usually the farmers are the only ones that will run into it more than anybody. Cattle herders, people that run horse ranches, that kind of thing. But it's really not that big of a problem. It's not that prevalent. Hoof and mouth is actually a bigger problem for them. So once DOD said we need all anthrax vaccines from everybody that you've ever sent anything to, that meant that all the pilot lot portions that these guys had come up with also got put into that batch. If it had the name anthrax on it, some idiot's out there throwing it in a box and sending it back. This all got mixed in as
so this is really important information, Jim, in the respect to, obviously Sarah knows, unfortunately, all too well about the vaccine and all the negativities involved with it. But everybody phrases things different, and now the way you're phrasing it, and people tell things in different mannerisms, it kind of shines another light on the vaccines, because we're all like, the news media will shine light on what's ever going to show them the biggest audience, whether it's something the government just passed, or we've acknowledged this finally, and that's okay. Now we're going to blame it all on this, and now we're going to blame it all on that. And now we're kind of listening to you. It's going to, I shouldn't say refocus things, but shine more of a light on the vaccine injured veterans, which we've had. Obviously, Sarah we've had another vet or two on, and you're sharing this, and you're sharing the breakdown, I guess, because I've never necessarily, and I'm sure Sarah could do an excellent job of explaining it as you are. It's just different experiences. So it's interesting. It just makes me cringe that much more.
Well, I like.
Oh no! It gets worse.
Oh no!
Trust me, it gets worse. The return to anthrax followed through the methodology that the lab always did. When they sent stuff out to these farmers, the farmers would send it back at the expiration date and, in essence, swap new one for the old one. Where these guys at the lab were concerned, the old one was the new one. All they did when they brought the bottles back in, they would pop the top off, stick a litmus paper down inside of it, shake it real good, see, hold it up to the light, see if there are any chunks in it. If there weren't, yay. The litmus paper would come out. They test what came out on that for what they consider to be potency, which is like a 3-step thing, it takes about 30 minutes. And then they take that bottle, dump it into a vat along with a whole bunch of other bottles. And I'm not kidding about this part. They would get a boat oar, a literal boat oar, stir it up like a witch's cauldron, make sure that everything got mixed with everything else, and then rebottle it and send it right back out.
Wow.
There is no quote unquote shelf life with this.
Holy.
So,
wow.
Yeah. Are you guys familiar? Are you guys familiar with Amish bread? You take a small piece of it and you hand it to somebody. They put more dough around it. They make another piece of bread, and then they take a piece off of that. And that's basically what they did with anthrax. That's methodology for manufacturing this stuff. Once you get the first pilot lot and you put a number on it, that lot is what you keep remixing with itself. When the emergency came up, this plant only had manufactured, a few 100,000 doses total that they had sent internationally. Once they got licensed in 1970, they started sending it to other countries. They started sending it to other countries as well as the United States. So for them, that was considered big business. It's still kind of a mom and pop operation. when you look at the numbers. For them, they were doing pretty good. When DOD called them up and said, okay, we need every dose that you have possibly got the access to. We need it today, and we don't care what it looks like. Get it to us today. Lives are depending on it. Do what you got to do. These guys jumped out of their butts and said, fine, we'll do exactly that. Everything that came in the door that said anthrax went into the vat, stir it up, put it back in a bottle, boom, out the door to DOD. So we had individuals
How
that were getting
confident?
possibly.
Let me ask you this question, Jim. How confident are you? Now I know you're sharing with us information. How confident are you in what you just told us as far as being quote unquote that's the truth? Period. End of story. I mean, do you think that story has changed over the course since you've learned about it, or do you think nope, this is exactly how it took place? It's just a question.
I have 100% capability of saying that that was a truth for one specific reason. I have talked several times with the guy who was the lead researcher, Dr. Bruce Ivins himself.
Wow.
So,
Well,
yeah,
you
I don't deal with peripheral stuff. I go straight to the source. I talk to the
That-
people who are involved in it. I get the names, the phone numbers. That's the way I deal with things.
I love that idea. Now, you made an analogy earlier, and I would like for you to talk about when you brought up about how the FDA. I would like for all the listeners to understand this because, see, I don't care what anybody says. We're talking about veterans who were vaccine injured by the anthrax shot, and that everybody that stands up and says, "Damn, I'm a patriot. I support our troops." Well, I would like for you to kind of say that how you put it earlier, and I love the way you put it. I never heard it put like that.
Oh, you're talking about the car analogy?
Oh yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, if you look at a veteran as a piece of machinery, what is the problem with going into a doctor and presenting just you, the first person they've ever seen with this symptomology, and saying, look, I've got this, and this wrong with me, and getting the doctor to look at you in a realistic manner and saying, okay, I can handle that. We'll start at ground zero and we'll figure you out. Essentially, this is the same thing as driving up to Pep Boys or someplace like that, pointing at your car and saying, hey, there's something wrong with my car over here. And the mechanic looking at you and saying, nah, I've never seen that happen with a car before, so we're not going to treat you. We'll wait until 15 or 20 more come through the door. Then we'll talk about the fan belts and the battery and all the other crap that's going on underneath your hood. Until then, hey, you're SOL, go sit in the waiting room. If your car dies, you're good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Awesome.
honestly,
I tell you what,
about it, we are a piece of equipment for the military.
right, they own us. But the part that pisses me off,
Yeah.
the part that pisses me off the most is own up to it. I mean, hell, the VA has already put stuff together about the
Yes.
anthrax vaccine. Own up to it. Just tell us what happened.
Mhm.
And so, which I told y'all earlier, which I'm going to tell all the listeners, I went to a Navy reunion this weekend, and I had a really good time. If you go to Las Vegas, you just to let y'all know, a lot of people smoke dope. But anyway, so so when we got to
Yeah.
talking, it's amazing how we all had the same issues. Some had real bad, severe migraines, neurological disorders, IBS. I mean, GERD. And it's so funny how all of us seem like we had the same issues. And you were talking about, like even later on, you may not get it now, but eventually you're gonna get something from this.
Yeah. Well, if you're standing right next to a person and a car is coming towards you, why would one person say, oh my gosh, I'm going to be folded over that car's hood, and the other person look at it and go, yeah, I'll be fine. It'll be cool. You're right next to each other. If you're out in the desert and you hear a chemical alarm go off, it's
Oh,
going to harm everyone. It's
Yeah.
not, that guy over there, he's screwed, but I'm good. No. If you're getting a vaccine in your arm and the person in front of you and behind you is getting the vaccine, same thing. Be concerned about somebody other than your own self. That's how we were trained in the military. I'm sorry, there are parts of the Army that are completely different than the one that I experienced to begin with at Fort Drum. I would personally like for everybody to go to Fort Drum for at least 30 minutes just to know what it's like. just to see what, oh, this is how we're supposed to be dealing with this. It doesn't matter if you're the first person or the last person on the battlefield. You do your job. That's it. You support the other troop that's around you. You take care of your brothers and sisters. You back other people up, because if we don't have each other's backs, who's going to? No one. You step up, you step in, or just step off and admit you can't handle it.
Amen.
And
That's
that's
perfect.
pretty much what we're doing right here. We're taking care of the veterans. We're stepping up and stepping in.
Right. And that's the other problem. So anybody who's listening, that is, I don't care where you're listening from, if you're on a Go4 page or you're on a Desert Storm page, it doesn't matter. We were all in this together, and we need to be together. Stop being separated from each other. That just burns me. I'm not even going to say what I want to say, because John get mad. But anyway,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
does. Now, Wade.
Right there with you, sir.
Yeah, Wade, you've been silent. I don't know why, but I'm ready. I'm ready for you to rock and roll on this.
Well, I've just taken it all in a little bit. I've actually followed Jim for quite a while, with his Golf Watch and his
Oh, that was
Facebook.
you in the bushes?
And I actually used a document that he had. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
the
that was-
bushes.
That was
I
you in the
come from
bushes.
Scott. And
Sorry.
that one was it had something to do with the effects of pesticides, as well as buying low pesticides locally, and how it affected the troops, and the DOD knew it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I actually used that paper. Was that Kevin?
Well, the Department of Defense, that's me.
Oh, okay.
Department of Defense actually came up with an idea of how to impregnate our uniforms with a mixture of 3M glue. The company 3M worked with them on this. They were manufacturing a pesticide that was mixed with 3M glue that they would then steam press onto our uniforms before we ever got them, straight from the factory. They would be impregnated with this stuff that, quote unquote, lasts the life of the uniform. That means you can wash it, and that stuff, it doesn't come out. This is up against your skin 24 hours a day, the whole time that you're wearing it. We were never told ahead of time that's what's going on. So imagine somebody who is wearing a uniform that is already saturated with a pesticide. Permethrin is what they were using. On top of that, they handed us bottles of cream of DEET to slather all over ourselves, and told us we needed to use the entire bottle. They gave us spray cans to spray ourselves with as well. So between just that alone, if you did that stateside in front of any doctor, they'd tell you go to the emergency room. You'd be calling poison control saying, my hand is twitching. I don't know why.
Right.
You know, but out in the field here, have another can, spray yourself, and do what you got to do. They're even telling us wear flea and tick collars around our ankles to make sure that the bugs didn't get on us.
What?
Yeah.
One of the real kickers. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. One of the real kickers in this. Everybody's dealt with the commissary, the PX, and APHIS, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody has dealt with those, right?
There's classes up there somewhere.
Well, APHIS is essentially the military's grocery store. They're the exchange service. You would expect them to know about canned goods, bread, and things like that. They put out a very concise, very straightforward memo that stated, and this was at the beginning of the war. They put this statement out saying, anybody that wears a flea or tick collar is going to put themselves at risk. It's going to lower their ability to deal with low-level chemical exposure, and it could lead to death. Now, if the Army's exchange, yeah, exactly. If their grocery store knows this, why didn't Schwarzkopf and the rest of these morons that were running things actually get off the can and say, oh my God, we're putting people at risk? Why don't we stop doing that to our own troops? If the grocery store knows this, and they were using technical terms in there, cholinesterase inhibitors, not something you run into in a grocery store.
So,
you know?
So Kevin, I know you may or may not be familiar with AAFES. AAFES stands for Army Air Force Exchange Service. It's like going into your local grocery store.
Hold on, wait. Did
Yes,
you
I
say
said it. I didn't say anything about Navy.
Air
I said
Force?
Army Air Force.
Army? Oh, so okay, so y'all had an exchange. We call it an exchange. Y'all had something with the Air Force, so y'all must have had nicer shit than what we did. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah,
Okay, I was just wondering.
it
I don't
wasn't
know about
bad.
that. I don't know about
We
that.
got the
Do you know what a
hand-me-down.
class? Do you know what? So Wade just made mention of Class 6. Do you know what Class 6 is? Kevin?
No. What's a
Class
class
6 store?
six?
Go ahead, Wade. It's all yours.
That's where
booze.
the Joes go and get their booze. It's all they sell: booze and cigarettes.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Making
hey,
a lot of my money.
we had a drive-through booze and liquor. You just drive through it, you
What?
pick it up. So y'all could kiss
We
my
don't
butt.
pay those
Really?
Oh,
get out and walk anywhere.
oh,
It was on Guam.
oh. Hey, in the Army, we had to actually walk for our beer.
Oh,
Oh,
no,
my
see,
God.
I don't like walking.
In the Army, we had to walk to get our beer.
Yeah, right.
We
And you
rode a
guys
boat.
just got to drive up to a freaking window?
Hey, we pulled
Yeah.
up. Hey, half the time I loaded some of it up on my cargo ship and then watching it. I mean, that's the sad part. When you load beer up and you're watching it and you haven't had one in 4 weeks and you're like, son of a bitch, where they taking, what cargo hold they holding that at?
3 or 4 weeks. My aching ass. 3 or 4 hours, maybe.
You had
Nah.
to go 3-4 weeks without a beer.
Oh,
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah, I
I buy
mean,
that.
Yeah, not buying that,
no.
Kevin.
We
No.
have gone 3 to 4 weeks without a beer. It ain't my fault y'all were in the sand. Nobody told y'all to
10
go in the damn
months
sand.
without a beer.
Okay, so
He's walking around
so
with his canteen full. Don't let him fool you.
okay, so Jim, I want to, because I seen your name around a lot, and a lot of people know who you are, and you've been a very big advocate. I know for a long time, and I know that it's disappointing that a lot of the veterans, don't come together on this. But how do we bring them together? What would be your solution?
Biggest thing we've got going for us is media. And I know a lot of people look at the media nowadays as it's, red state, blue state. The heck with that. Let's do purple. Let's call it even.
Yeah.
Bottom line, information is key. It always has been. If you put information into somebody's hands and you tell them it's pertinent, it's something that's going to help them personally, and they can do something real with it. They can put their hand on it and actually do it. It's not just this amorphous idea of, 10 years from now, maybe. This is something you can do today. If you put it into those terms, people will rally to that pretty quickly. If you give them something tangible, if you actually put something they can put in their hand, take to the VA. Now, one thing in particular that I've tried to make sure everybody I talk to either has access to, has done, has used, knows about, or just, any of the above, the CCEP, because the CSEP is what I nicknamed it, the Comprehensive Clinical Evaluation Protocol. This is the 3-phase guideline that the Department of Defense, there's a storm troop who comes in and says, hey, I got problems. Maybe you got answers. Can you help me out? It's kind of a standardized way of doing it. They can deviate from it if they find something else going on, sure. But these are the baseline tests that they're going to have to do every time. One of the most startling things that you can run into is get 50 people that have gone through the registry exam and ask them, did anybody mention these guidelines? Did anybody give you phase 1, 2, and 3? 49 out of the 50 are going to tell you, what's a CSAP? I never heard that there were guidelines. I showed up. What they do with me is what they do with me. So that basic piece of information, that to me, that's the most basic piece of information that we need to get into everybody's hands. Once they see that there is a standardized set of tests, this isn't, just you walk in the front door, maybe they'll take care of you, maybe they won't. There's no figuring it out. It's already been figured out. For us, the military mind is, okay, is there a standard? Once you establish there is a standard, that means, it's been in the system for long enough, it's been recognized long enough, people understand what to do with it. Once you give the troops that kind of assurance, they start getting a little more confidence in being able to speak up and speak out. And as John and I realize, there are some things a lot of people don't want to talk about.
Mm.
I mean, we're, beat the chest and, oh, we're macho, nothing's wrong with me. Hey, I'm coughing up blood and everything's cool, no problem, no big deal. When you get to the point where you can no longer function, and that's when you start asking for help, usually it's too late.
Right.
The standard has to be, if you went to the war, you go through the registry exam, you have in your hand when you walk in there the CSEP guidelines, so the VA guys and gals cannot BS you and say, we don't do that kind of crap here. No, sorry. The documents right here say it's law. You have to do this. Empower the soldier, empower the troop, give them what they need to go in there and actually get what they have earned by their service.
Right.
First and foremost. Once you do that, the rest's going to fall into place.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for everybody out there, I just want all y'all to understand one thing. We still go into the VA and the doctors still don't know what Gulf War illness is. They still don't know if it really happened. That's our problem right now. Is they have a PACT Act and they talk about the burn pit, but on there it should have had big letters saying Desert Storm veterans and the oil rig fires and the burn pits and the anthrax shots and the P-tabs and the sarin gas and the mustard gas. They took it out of the bill.
Yeah.
So for all y'all, that's Camp Lejeune, thank God. I'm so happy for them. But the rest of the bill, crock shit.
Yes. Same here. Same here.
It is. It's a crock of shit. Because if
one
you
other thing,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to augment what you were talking about.
I do have a question for Jim. So
go ahead, bro.
In June, I believe it was June, May or June, Dr. Haley, came out and said that the cause of Gulf War illness is sarin. And I dealt with several researchers, and I've gone through different testing, and I reached out to them to ask their opinion, and they're all in the same school of thought of, they don't believe it's the sole source, because a lot of Gulf War veterans who never deployed, but they did get inoculations, are sick.
Right.
People who went to Kuwait went to Iraq. So I know Kuwait saw more of the oil fires and the smoke than we did in Iraq. So what I'm wondering is, so he's been doing this better than 30 years. He's coming up on retirement. He comes out with this bold finding. Now, are they going to, is this like the VA, his way, the government's way of just putting this to bed and saying, okay, this is what caused it. Eventually down the road, yes, you were exposed to sarin. We're just going to give you a nice token disability rating, and it's all going to go away. Kind of like the Vietnam veterans with Agent Orange. They finally admitted Agent Orange, and now they're admitting sarin, and then now they, some, not all, not me, not you, there's something else to it.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. One of the most basic statements that I have been making since day one is there is no single source or single cause to Gulf War syndrome. I mean, if you want to equate this to something, look at the legal methodology of guesswork, if you want to call it that. Stab, shoot, and poison the fourth person and then throw him off the 10-story building. What is the cause of death? That's what DOD has been putting us through since day one. We have been forced to do the research. We have been forced to find out what's wrong with us without the resources to be able to do this, without 90% of the documentation. There were people that were only exposed to the PB tablet. There's one very standout example of that is Colonel Neil Tetzloff. He flew from, I think it was Germany, over to Saudi Arabia. During that time frame, he took 3 of the PB pills. He ended up throwing up blood to the point where he passed out. That was the only exposure he had. He didn't have any of the vaccines. He didn't get exposed to the environment, the oil well fires, any of that. And he has the exact same symptoms that I do. I got the anthrax and botulinum vaccines, actually about 8 of them at the same time, which they shouldn't have done. Oil well fires. I left theater before Comacea, which was in March of 91. I left on February 18th of 1991. So I was not physically in theater for any of that. I was there for the first oil well fires. But bottom line, all of us had the same symptoms because each one of those insults to our health causes the same symptoms. It's literally as simple as that. If you're exposed to depleted uranium, the heavy metals, the toxins themselves, they will bottom out your immune system and you'll have the physical response and reaction just like we're having. If you're exposed to organophosphate pesticides or chemical warfare agents, same thing. Your cholinesterase gets bottomed out, your immune system follows it, you're going to have the same symptomology. Are any of you familiar with the research that went into diagnosing or finding a method to be able to diagnose the illness known as lupus?
Nope.
That is, if you look at the history of lupus and the history of diagnosing us, it is almost exactly the same path. Lupus is diagnosed not by one symptom, but by a constellation of symptoms. It's like 5 to 10 different things that can be clustered together, but any combination of any of those within that is considered a diagnosis for lupus. So where we're concerned, if you were only given the anthrax vaccine and didn't deploy, then, your symptomology is going to be what happens to you. The person that was only exposed to the sand or only this or only that, it shouldn't really matter what specifically caused the problems at the beginning, because the treatment's going to be almost exactly the same for each one. In the case of organophosphate exposures, whether it's pesticide or the PB pill, or pesticides or the nerve agents, that's going to be esterase replacement therapy. The PB pill, esterase replacement therapy. It's the same thing as if you called up poison control and said, hey, I ate half a bag of malathion. What do I do? It's exactly the same thing. And man, seriously, you have a migrant worker running around out in the fields picking vegetables or fruit, and it's exactly the same thing. You can call up poison control here and say, I've got these symptoms, which all of us would have if VX, any of those nerve agents. Those symptoms would be exactly the same thing as the migrant worker who got overexposed to a pesticide out in the fields. So here we have an 800 number and people standing by 24/7 to receive our call to give us help in an emergency room that knows how to use the treatments: atropine, which is part of the Mark I kit, 2-pan chloride, which is part of the Mark I kit. We had the treatment on our hip the entire damn time. This isn't a mystery for DOD. This is not a mystery. They've known about this particular aspect of nerve agents since World War II.
So, yeah,
we're talking 70 years.
Kevin, have you ever been, and Jim just said we had it on our hip. Do you know what he's referencing? I mean, Wade and I do, and Jim clearly does, but do you know what we're referencing?
No.
Kevin?
No.
Okay.
Auto-injector kit.
And and I don't know how long that damn needle is, but so this atropine injector was, correct me if I'm wrong, huh? Yeah. All I know is they say clear your pocket, and I didn't want to ever have to use that son of a bitch. I know that.
Yeah.
Because they would say
we
would practice. We would practice with the dummy, clear our hips, and give ourselves a pretend shot. And I'm like, I hope to pray I never actually have to do this. And of course, we never did. But yeah, it's a really long needle and puts that garbage into your body. And what's it supposed to do, Jim? Or what was its intention?
Well, atropine is a belladonna extract. Basically, it's a flower that they take the chemicals out of. It's supposed to bind with the organophosphate that's in your body and reduce its effectiveness. If you look at the nervous system, you have incoming line and an outgoing line, and you have a gap in between. Acetylcholine is excreted as the muscles need to contract. It fills that gap and the nerve impulse goes through. Then it comes out and gets replaced by the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. When you have an organophosphate come in, something comes in, hits that, and stays there. It never goes out. So it causes the muscles to remain in contraction, and you die from that because you can't breathe, you can't move, your body just turns into a solid rock, basically. With this kind of a treatment, atropine would sit in that place and keep the organophosphate from getting in there. To do it temporarily.
So it's just
if there was damage to
that
nerve, it would bind around.
That's what its intention was,
yeah,
just
pretty
to
much.
extend our life, basically. Look, to fight a little bit more is the way
Right.
I kind of thought it through.
Yeah.
So yeah, so Navy didn't
Yeah,
have
it's-
anything like that, Kevin.
No, man.
What
Hell
the hell they
no.
need it for all the way out there?
They have it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't.
You
The
remember,
corpsman
right,
would
John,
have
and
it.
Yeah,
Jim,
yeah,
correct me if
yeah.
I'm wrong.
We had a
Was
hospital.
didn't each troop carried 3 sets for the atropine auto injector?
Okay, why?
To answer your question, John, the needle long enough that it will go through your chem suit, because that's typically what you're going to have on if you're in that environment, and your fatigues, and then a deep muscle injection into your thigh. So you're well over an inch and a half, possibly 2 inches before that to get you.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Isn't this like that's like that? Where I can't. I was going to be sarcastic. That's like 2 inches, right?
Well,
Oh,
I couldn't.
the needle on yeah, the needle on one of the atropines is literally the length of my pinky.
The hell with that. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we're talking a 10 gauge needle. A 10 gauge needle is approximately 3 inches long, and it can squirt about an ounce. I think it's an ounce and a quarter in about half a second. So yeah, it's under extreme pressure, and it's not fun. If you hit in the wrong place, it will actually penetrate the bone, and you'll be
wonderful.
yanking it out of your leg. Which
Yeah.
is,
And-
oh yeah,
See, John,
yeah. So
I take
yeah, you
something like that.
you got
for my,
nervation to deal with, and yeah, it's no fun. You know, the atropine and the 2-PAM chloride, those two together will actually, after the fact, after exposure, will reset the body's chemical basis. In other words, it's kind of like if you stir up the mud too awful much in a glass, you have to wait for it to settle. The atropine and 2-PAM is kind of like putting a coffee filter on top of it that you can push down and make everything go back where it's supposed to be. So it's kind of a settling the system, reset the system kind of method.
Okay.
Chemically
Didn't it also,
speaking,
Jim,
it's
with the atropine,
sure.
didn't it also
Mhm.
help us, because like if you get exposed to chemical agents, it could potentially stop your heart, slow your heart down, but the atropine would kickstart the heart
Yes.
and start get your pulse rate back up and help circulate it through the body faster.
Right. And 2-PAM chloride is basically the same thing as a Valium. It's in the
Okay.
same basic category. So the atropine takes you way up and stimulates your system, and then the 2-PAM chloride brings you back down afterwards, so you don't overstimulate and get a heart attack because of that. So that's why I was saying it's kind of a reset of the system. It smacked it around a little bit, but gets it back on track. And the reason we had 3 of them is depending on the person's body size, their mass, and how much exposure they had. You may need 3 of them, which means that the old trick, you have to put the first one through your pocket so your buddy coming over knows you've already had one. The whole reason that you do that is because you'll be laying there on the ground sweating your butt off, and you won't be able to talk, you won't be able to communicate with anybody, you'll just be laying there sweating. So the person walking up to you is looking at you going, well, he's already had one, here's 2 more, and they'll take care of you.
I like
That's
that.
horrible.
I like the way they
Yeah.
just walk up
Yeah.
and everything.
So,
Oh yeah.
And I know our video.
So we're
Hold on, John. Hold on. I know our video is kind of messing up, but our audio is good.
Mhm.
And so I just want everybody to know that, because this is an important message. Anthrax shot, the anthrax poison, that's what I'll call it, it is important for each and every person
Mhm.
out there who took the shot to know it was tainted.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Absolutely.
it pisses
And,
me off. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, there's worse. There's worse. Well, I am the bearer of gloom and doom. I hope you understand that. I'm the Grim Reaper when it comes to your hopes and dreams. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Sorry to have to tell you that, guys. Yeah.
All right, let's
Yeah,
get to
that's
the
what you're gonna
worst.
be.
I'm
Is that
definitely not-
what you're saying? What you're saying, Jim, is then come Halloween, you just go out as yourself and
Yeah.
put the Grim Reaper outfit on, and that's what you are every Halloween.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, let's get to the worst.
Whenever I
news.
show up,
Hey.
okay.
It's the worst.
Well, the FDA went in after the war and did an inspection on the Michigan plant. The Michigan Department of Public Health manufactured both the botulinum and the anthrax vaccine. They make a whole lot of other things, and there's some, oh my God, horror stories about that. But bottom line is, these guys have been making this vaccine since 1950. They didn't get licensed until 20 years later in 1970, and they didn't actually have to do mass production and mass distribution until the war. We got the vaccine. I got the vaccine in, first one in August of 1990. So for me, it was 6 years later. The FDA finally realized, oh my gosh, maybe the vaccine we licensed these guys for could be part of Gulf War syndrome. We might want to run over there and just, for the heck of it, let's lift up the hood and see if anything underneath goes. Well, it turned out there was a whole lot of, oh my God. The very first sentence that they have in the inspection report in 1996, oh my God. For anybody that's even vaguely familiar with manufacturing, this is something that will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The process for manufacturing the anthrax vaccine is not validated. Yeah. For someone in industry, that basically means, oh, so they're shutting you down. You can no longer manufacture this. You can't make this. It's not safe, legal. It's just not a good idea for you to be involved in this in any way, shape, or form. That's what that one sentence means. They started off the report from there, and it went downhill from there. They went into the plant. Oh my God. By the way, I've got both of the reports, one from 1996 and one from 1998, posted in my Facebook albums. You can take a look at those if you really want to read a horror story. The inspectors went into the plant with the idea that, okay, it's a Michigan Department of Public Health. We have government standards, and they're supposed to keep up with them. Turns out they didn't know what those government standards even were. When the inspectors went in there, they picked up, oh yeah, it's like I said, gloom and doom. That's me. They picked up vials that were supposed to be ready to go out the door, that were sitting on the shelf, ready to go out the door and be put into somebody's arm. They would pick these vials up, shake them, hold them up to the light, and see chunks floating around inside of this thing. There is zero likelihood that that is supposed to go into somebody's arm. So they decided, why don't we find out what those chunks are? They took a couple of samples. One of the contaminants that they found in there was Neisseria gonorrhea, also known as the clap. How in bloody hell? I know. How can you possibly get a class? We're talking a spore-based organism that is a biosafety level 3. There's only 4. This is a biosafety level 3 spore-based organism. You have to be completely head to toe covered going anywhere near the production facility to manufacture this stuff. And somehow the clap gets into a vaccine. Really? Part of me wants to know how that happened, and another part of me is like, no,
I don't want to know.
Nope,
I don't
want to know.
Oh my God.
No, it found fungal, viral, and bacterial contaminants in ready to go blood products as well. They make powdered albumin, and they also use a brake tank in the back to manufacture IgG. Now, all of us, including Mr. Navy there, knows what an IgG shot is, because it's that ice cold golf ball at the top of your butt that they give you. You got to know that one. Yeah. Immune globulin.
I can't say it.
Yeah. Okay.
Hero syrup.
I know, IgG. This stuff is manufactured out of blood that's donated by at least 1,000 people. That way they despeciate it. There's so many people that are donating to this that you get a little bit of everything, and that literally blanks out this being specific to any one person or any one type of person. So you have to have a massive amount of blood to be able to do that. They had a 400-liter brake tank back there. You know what the little the natural gas lozenge that people have in their yard looks like? It's a thermos sitting on its side, has a big thing on the top of it. You flip the lid open.
Yes. We have them all.
Right. This thing looks exactly like that, except it's a 400-liter size. The top is open. They have a metal strainer in there with holes basically about the size of a pencil stuck in it. So, big chunkies. The people that worked there would grab bags out of the freezer of frozen blood, cut the bags open, plop the frozen blood into the strainer, and then just walk off. They'd leave it there so it would melt into the tank. Eventually, they get enough in there, then they could close the lid, hook it up to the hoses, and run it through the system to be able to manufacture the IgG. Problem with these guys, and this is huge, the inspectors are walking around. Now, these are FDA inspectors. They're walking around inside the plant, and the people who work there are going nonchalantly about their business. They are grabbing the plastic bags and just cutting them open, letting them drip onto the thing, just throwing the bags into the garbage can next to it. You don't have a sight glass on this, so you can't tell when it's full. So these guys are putting just chunks on top, chunks on top. Anybody that walks by would put more in there because it takes a few hours for the stuff to melt enough to make enough in there. There's blood slopping over the edge of this thing. 2 hours go by. These inspectors walking back and forth, hoping, praying somebody's going to come in there with a mop or at least a paper towel and wipe the thing down. Nobody did any cleanup in any way, shape, or form. There were flies buzzing around. I mean, again, this is a government facility that's supposed to be making things that people use. It's not just a hobby. This is their job. And this is the way they were doing it of the inspectors.
So wow. I think we could go on for a really long time here, Jim, but I think we're getting near the end. So one of the things I guess there are a lot of takeaways here, but one of the most important is that whoever's listening to this, whether it's yourself a veteran or know a veteran, we've all talked about it before, but you've reemphasized it on this particular show. The fact that if you don't necessarily have any symptoms, or you probably have symptoms but aren't aware of it, things are going to get progressively worse.
Yes.
And if you know a fellow veteran and know that you can see that they have issues, bring it to light and step up and say, hey, let's get something figured out. Let's move forward on this. So I think that's really important because that's what this is all about, spreading the word as to how can we help one another. We're trying to help one another doing this podcast.
Right.
And so I think here again, there's a lot of takeaways in this podcast, but
Woo. I
totally agree with you, brother. If
I don't even know what to say right now. I'm still stuck on the gonorrhea shit.
you got so many questions. But you're right.
I would like to do this.
I hear you, brother. I do.
Would you be available for next Tuesday night, Jim?
Absolutely.
I would like to bring you back on and continue this conversation because there is a lot going through my mind, but I just can't get the gonorrhea out of my mind. I'm so mad. I've never had it, but I'm just really pissed. And I was wondering, Wade, would you be okay with next Tuesday?
Absolutely.
John?
I do have one question for Jim before we go.
Yes.
Do you on your Facebook cover page, which I encourage everybody to find you, there's just a wealth of information on your page. You have the Life magazine. Do you still have that?
Yes.
I think I have.
Yes, it's still on there. I can send it to you as a PDF if you need it.
I think that'd be important to show. If you have your copy, I can dig through my stuff. I think I might have my copy because the birth defects, and like I say every show, the birth defects that have been going on with our kids, that is my main mission. But this, I want to say, don't quote me on the date. Jim will probably know, but I want to say that issue would give or take 1996 time frame. And
it was 95.
No, I was pretty damn close.
Yes,
that's the birth defects trace all the way back to then, and it's a very dramatic cover.
So next week,
I thought I had it around here.
Well, we're gonna bring that up.
I put it out.
Right. We're going to bring that into the next topic, Wade, about the birth defects.
Okay.
I mean, Jim,
Perfect.
you are a wealth of information. I have learned more tonight that I never didn't want to know, but I wanted to, that my mind is spinning like hell right now. But I mean, I want to thank
Oh,
you. Thank you for coming on this evening, and everybody be ready for part
oh,
two.